What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Happy Skews Day to you. It's June 4th, 2024. I'm Trey. That's Mark. Happy Pride, Mark. Happy Pride Month. Happy Pride to all y'all out there.
Yeah, I saw it. If you saw, the FBI was marching at West Hollywood Pride. It's like because society's in a weird point right now. I'm not sure what to
Yeah.
make of any of it, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like,
I texted you this, but so just on that note, Pride Month kicking off. Well, for me, I went to a Dodgers game Sunday, and when it was over, everybody was filing out, and there was like people walking this way, and a guy walking this way. As he walked past me, he was like a shredded, very gay coded dude in the tank top. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You have beautiful eyes," and I've been floating ever since. Mar, I told Kay, I was like, "Oh my God, did you hear that? It was so sweet." Like, you
yeah,
don't give me the vapors, I don't get a lot of compliments, right? So I appreciate them.
yeah,
I don't understand, people that would be
yeah.
upset by that. So shout out to that guy. If you ever hear this, you made my week.
This is very weird how America co-ops everything. But my understanding is Pride commemorates, cops in New York would bust up gay bars and stuff, and like it commemorates a trans woman throwing a brick through a cop car window, and now
Mm-hmm.
you got Raytheon Pride floats. It's
Yes.
just like
Yeah.
the
Well,
Bank of America says Happy Pride.
well,
All right,
yeah. Well,
so
they've got consultants. They've run numbers or whatever that tell them, that they should do that. I guess. So what are you going to do?
look, and it's better than the alternative. It's better than Raytheon shooting a missile at a Pride parade, but it
Yeah.
is what it is. So a couple things we get to the show. So this is pretty funny. Mexico elected a new president, a woman named Claudia Sheinbaum. She's the first woman president of Mexico and the first Jewish person elected president of Mexico.
Yeah.
And so the hardcore conspiracy theorists who make up 80% of the online right wing were saying like, oh, it must have been rigged because a Jewish person got elected president of a state that's like 98% Catholic or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's like,
And the
well, first of
Jews,
all,
they rig things, they control things. So this would be
right,
right in their wheelhouse to rig a Mexican election for
right.
reasons.
It's also hilarious because like the idea that the CIA would have to get involved for there to be a rigged Mexican election is funny if you know anything about history of Mexican
Right.
politics.
Yeah.
But on paper, I don't know enough about Mexican politics to judge her. AMLO, the party she's a part of, is she was basically a handpicked successor of the outgoing guy whose name I can't think of at the moment, who's not uncorrupt. But she's on paper. She's a climate scientist, pretty solid lefty, and she's spoken out about civilian deaths in Gaza. So when she got up to give her thank you speech, she thanked Jesus, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
ears perked up. It's like, oh, that just proves she's not a real Jew because she thanked Jesus, and everybody's like, well, actually, your husband's named Jesus.
It's funny because I was in the outline you have in there. She thanked and I read it as Jesus, and I was going to make a joke about, well, maybe it's just Jesus, like somebody she works with or something, somebody in her office. But no, it literally was her husband.
Well,
It's funny.
your joke is smarter than their real take. Is where we get at. But I just like had a moment of wishing her husband was named Mohammed, so the whole world would have melted down. In other international goings on, so North Korea launched balloons with trash bags tied to them over South Korea this week with timers on them that went off and released. It was like a bunch of garbage, cigarette butts, plastic water bottles, unused paper and shoes, and with like compost. I also heard it reported as like human shit. All right. And
that'll show them.
Yeah. So South Korea sent like biological response teams or whatever to it. Like, oh, this is just garbage. And I'm like, it's sort of funny. Like, whenever nukes do get launched, it's going to be the end of the world, obviously. But in the meantime, since the development of nukes and a bunch of people having nukes, this is just what war looks like most of the time now, is just trolling with garbage.
Right.
It's like,
this
it's
is
sort
like
of
the North Korean Air Force or whatever.
Yes.
Trash strike, just tie a bunch of shit to a balloon and send it. They're like sitting there with BB guns, waiting until it gets far enough, and shoot them out or whatever.
It's kind of like how like China and India, they both have nukes, obviously, and so or I'm not sure if India and Pakistan.
Yeah, India does.
Anyway.
I think India and Pakistan, they both do, right? And also
I think
China.
so. Yeah,
I think all those countries there have them.
So on their border, the troops, they don't let them have guns because they're always like confrontations. They don't want to jump off any sort of nuclear war. So they just have big battles with like sticks and shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is sort of like this is just we got to do a war, but we can't have an effective one because it'll turn nuclear. So you guys just hit each other with sticks. That'll be fine. So, but like, so this is North Korea says in response to like North Korean defectors in the South, like airdropping pamphlets that say like, actually down here we have food and electricity.
Right.
And I'm like, this is like, so they're telling our people that we have electricity, that they have electricity, so we got to send some human shit and and paper towel rolls. It's
like, well, up here we got trash. Yeah, I mean that whole deal is wild. I mean so it's defectors from North Korea specifically. They're doing the operation, the anti-propaganda operation or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, people that are motivated enough to risk death to cross into South Korea are going to be the most anti-communist motherfuckers.
For sure. Yeah, well, because that's what I was going to say. It's like I mean, I've seen videos on the internet of like defectors, like fucking Jason Bourne sprinting across the DMZ or whatever while they, while like gunshots pop up around them and stuff. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, but we got to have a hard border in America, Trey. That'll work.
Yeah. All right. Well, with us as always is producer Matt doing his thing back there. This is Weekly Skews. Before we continue, I want to remind y'all of a couple of things. Number one, if you'd like to see me do stand-up live and in person, and you should, of course, go to TreyCrowder.com. Check out the upcoming tour dates. The next 2 days, I'll be in Virginia with good buddy Drew Morgan. Y'all know him, you love him. Then after that, I'm going to Florida this weekend for 3 dates in North Florida with the lovely Donnie Singstack, who has toured with me before. So y'all come and see us. And after that, I'll be in Orange County a little bit, San Jose, Tulsa, and on from there, TreyCrowder.com. Also on that website, you can find a link to me and Corey's book, Around Here and Over Yonder, a comedic travel guide. We read the audio book if you're into that. You got some Audible credits or whatever, however that works. Check it out. And then lastly, if you enjoy this program and would like to show your support, you can do so by signing up on Patreon. You can go to weeklyskews.com/more, or you can just go to Patreon and search for my name. Either way works. $5 a month gets you access to full-length bonus episodes. We got one coming up this week. We do 2 a month, and we cover things that we don't have time for in this, the main show, or things that happen in between, or just fun stuff we want to talk about. So get some more Skews in your life. Support the show in the process. Check us out on Patreon. All right, as for the show tonight, what else will we be talking about? The big bombshell verdict from last week. Trump guilty on 34 counts. How about that shit, y'all? What do you say about that? Well, a lot of people got a lot to say about that, except seemingly the Democrats for some reason. But we'll get into the discourse in the wake of that jury's decision a little later. But first, we begin with the Daily Dumbass. Matt, graphic, please. Tonight's DD. Anyone who turned on Congress yesterday and didn't ask themselves, what year is it? This is Dr. Fauci testifying in front of the House Select Subcommittee on the pandemic.
Do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow. I think most of the country would find that amazing. I said 11 seconds.
But look at the facts. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
All right, I yield back.
All right. So I have no idea why they're doing this now, except for the New York Times op-ed this week about where a woman argued that it was a fault of a lab mistake or whatever. The Fauci's been retired for a few years now. Trump gave him like the American Medal, the American Freedom Medal or whatever, and he sent him off. And like, it's like there's so much like I can't. All right. So the lab leak thing, I don't know why we're talking about it now. And I really was like, what the. Fauci doesn't even go here anymore.
Right.
Like, what the fuck are we doing? And like, so, but they seem to believe that like Tony Fauci, who is the director of the National Institutes of Health, which gives non-binding advice, like don't eat rare steak, is somehow was president in 2020 and made Trump shut down the country when most of it wasn't shut down at all. And
and they think that he personally profited greatly from it, right? Like that's part of their rationale or their theory is that he was enriching himself off the back of the pandemic and was doing so by making it seem so much worse than it really was. So people get the vaccines, all that shit, which was putting money in his pocket. That's what they say.
And I've never been able to wrap my head around also like the idea that like why the most of us should care if it was a lab leak. Like if it, like the lab leak theory, as sane people think of it, is somebody dropped a vial.
Right. I'm
Right.
glad you said that because I was going to bring that up too. I was going to ask, like, my understanding, the lab leak theory. It's not that it was like purposefully leaked, like someone leaks a script or an album early, right? Like someone leaked it from the lab and started it. That's not even the theory. Is just like you said, it leaked out like a leak in a water hose or something. And in that case, you know, I mean, that don't hit obviously, but it's pretty different.
It's very different from one's an act of war or terrorism, and the other one is an oopsie, right?
Big old
like
oopsie.
big old oopsie. And so like they killed, you know, tens of millions of people. But the idea like it's like, so the pushback has been against, like, they want to, the people that are pushing the lab leak the hardest are doing it because they want to absolve Trump of responsibility for anything dealing with the pandemic, which doesn't make any sort of sense. If your country's attacked in an act of war and you don't respond, that's bad also. But it seems like just time travel with me back to 2020 for a second here. The same people believe both that COVID was completely harmless. It was completely harmless, no reason to take any precautions, let alone a vaccine, and COVID was a biological superweapon created by the Chinese Communist Party to wage war on the people of Earth. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's par for the course for them, dude. It's the same way that, like, you know, Joe Biden is a sleepy, incompetent papaw, and also, like, you know, the most nefarious covert operative we've ever seen, or whatever the hell that, you know, a 4D chess playing super genius at the same time. They do that sort of shit always.
Right. I guess our version of it is thinking that Donald Trump's a stupid, incompetent moron who's also a threat to destroy the world. But but my thing is, like,
that can that can lead, one of those can lead to the other one. Yeah, right, exactly.
Hitler was also mean and stupid.
Yeah.
All right. So, like, mean and stupid is a deadly combination. So anyway, so like it's, but basically the thought process is our Chinese biological superweapon is unstoppable except by a cheap and abundant horse dewormer. All right. So that's where they get these people's brain headspace. So Fauci, I thought, did a pretty good job of trying to explain the difference between thinking it could have been, like, if it was a lab leak, obviously people with PhDs and experts in public health and virology and medical research would have to get together and have a big meeting about whether it's worth it to do research on diseases when you create the possibility of oopsies, right? But it's not. The military doesn't get involved in those conversations. Neither do the rest of us, because I don't have the expertise for it. I don't really know what you get out of gain of function research, except maybe you're able to develop. If you're able to predict or create mutations to know what mutations are coming, you can create vaccines, already have them on the shelf for diseases that are coming, right? So anyway, but here's Fauci trying to push back on the conspiratorial part of this thinking here, and I think in a way that sort of would help it make some more sense to most people. That's not this clip. Maybe it is, Matt. See if
yeah, they're actually the next two. This clip contains both of the next two, but just the first half of this one.
Okay,
you know
sorry.
I mean? Yeah.
You did not suppress the lab leak theory, yet in the past you have said, quote, it is a distortion of reality, unquote. You've said, quote, I've heard these conspiracy theories, and like all conspiracy theories, they're just conspiracy theories. That's what you told the American people. And so would you like to clarify what science were you following then versus now?
Yeah, no, I've also been very, very clear and said multiple times that I don't think the concept of there being a lab leak is inherently a conspiracy theory. What is conspiracy is the kind of distortions of that particular subject, like it was a lab leak and I was parachuted into the CIA like Jason Bourne and told the CIA that they should really not be talking about a lab leak.
Thank you.
That's the conspiracy.
Appreciate that.
All right, okay, so yeah, so again, to go back to 2020 here, because everybody's people trying to justify Trump's bullshit have, like, sort of forgotten the sequence of events here. The pandemic started publicly in China, right? And then Trump acted like it was no big deal because China's government was acting like it's no big deal. They were on the same side of pretending it was no big deal, and they have it under control, all right? Because you can say, for whatever reason, governments that are in power always have interest in downplaying pandemics because pandemics create instability and governments like stability, right? So, like, Trump was, like, basically sucking Xi's dick, President Xi, and on his side. And with Joe Biden in the middle of the campaign was like, I actually wouldn't take China's word for this. I would insist on our medical experts being let in to do research about the origins of the pandemic. and not trust the Chinese Communist Party. And Trump was like, no, we got to trust him. Right. So like I know everything that seems like it doesn't make sense, but that's what happened in 2020. Now, maybe if Biden was in power, he would have had an interest in downplaying the pandemic too. I have no idea, but that's not what happened in reality. All you have to look at is what actually happened. And somehow we're all just pretending shit didn't happen. And for example, let's play this next clip from that one congresswoman. Her name is Nicole Maliotakis.
There you go.
Yeah.
The conspiracy.
Appreciate that. Dr. Fauci, how much have you earned from royalties from pharmaceutical companies since the pandemic began in 2021?
Pause it, Matt.
0.
Pause it. Did you catch that? Since the pandemic began in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now just officially pretending Trump was not president in 2020.
Right.
That's the level we're operating at now. And like a lot of when they talk about when the Republicans make arguments about the economy or whatever, they always act like 2020 goes on Biden's record too. The huge crime wave under COVID, the mass protests, the pandemic, all that happened under Biden in their head. All right.
Right.
But the fun fact to know here is Maliotakis was elected to Congress in 2020. So surely she remembers the year she was elected to Congress. And when she took office, which would have been January 2021, the same as Joe Biden. All right. So she's just full of made up shit. And you can finish this video, Matt, if you want. Sorry, I just wanted to pause it after we got that part.
Yeah, because this is them talking about the money.
Yeah.
It says NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers. You're saying that you did not receive any of the $710 million.
On COVID, I received, I think, $122 for a monoclonal antibody that I made 27 years ago.
Okay, so just in general, though, how much have you received, not related to COVID, just in general, how much have you received in royalties between 2021 and 2023?
I think none.
Okay, so somebody received the $710 million.
Somebody did, but not me.
You didn't receive any royalties. Okay.
So
I see no royalties
All right, so you cut it,
associated
man.
with
a few
COVID.
things about this. So I saw the discussion about this on Twitter, and some other people pointing. They showed this clip. See, he says none. He says he got none, but whatever tax records, whatever it is, show that in 2019, before the pandemic, and this is all blue check patriots saying all this stuff on Twitter. 2019, before the pandemic started, Fauci's net worth was like $8 million. They said, and it said now today, his net worth is like 11.5 or $12 million. So clearly he's full of shit, but it's like, and I'm money dumb very openly. So, but I feel like that's not really a crazy or egregious amount of growth for someone who has that much money to begin with. Like if you have $8-something million 5 years ago and you do rich people shit with it, especially during, this economy and the markets and all that, like 5 years later, the idea that it went up by 3 million is not that inherently crazy. Number two, the whole NIH scientists getting royalties for developing the vaccines and whatnot. It's like, so big pharma they helped develop them. Like they had a part in the process of developing it, right? So big pharma should be able to just like get that benefit for free and then keep all the profits themselves. And that would be okay. Or big pharma making all these profits off the vaccines. That's not inherently shady or anything, but like the fact that the government scientists who, were a part of the process in developing it, that makes it inherently shady somehow. I just don't get any of that. It's also like, an incentive to have people who hit at science to work at the NIH, in situations like this. It's like, I just don't get what's wrong with any of that.
Yeah, and 8 to 12 million over the course of what's it been 5 years?
5
That's
years.
That's just index mutual fund, right? Plus, he probably wrote a book. I imagine he wrote a book, and if he wrote one, it's probably successful.
He gets speaking engagements and all that shit.
So,
a bunch of rich people shit.
Right, rich people shit. But yeah, you're right. Like it's like these people made a bunch of money off, making treatments. It's like, aren't you guys capitalists? But I guess what they're trying to insinuate is the people at the NIH had a financial incentive to jumpstart the pandemic.
Yes, but I don't know. Isn't that I like? Can't you just apply that logic to kind of any sort of medical situation? Do you know what I mean? Like where big pharma's involved, like that's always true. Like if you make money off fighting or treating or curing some kind of disease, then you are inherently financially incentivized to, propagate that disease. Like that's always true. We just have to like hope that they don't do that or whatever. But
also had a financial incentive to jumpstart the pandemic. DoorDash. Instacart.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Clorox wipes. So
Yeah.
like, are you? But the real thing is like, Nancy Maliotakis, are you arguing that we should take the profit motive out of the healthcare system? Because we're on the same side if
Right.
you are, but if you're
Yeah.
not, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, as she's wont to do, turned this whole thing into a circus where she refused to call Fauci doctor. She made a big show calling him Mr. Fauci, saying he should go to jail for crimes against humanity, which I'm pretty sure there is an actual crime against humanity law, but whatever. Anyway, this is her after the hearing, kind of hitting. Here you go.
That Republicans across the country and many Americans in general are sick and tired and fed up with a feckless, useless Republican Party in conference that does nothing.
All right, yep, you can cut it back. So,
I mean,
you just
spitting. Well, you know, when you're right, you're right.
She just spent hours and a bunch of government money holding memes she printed off the internet off at a retired guy.
Right.
And she's like, this feckless do nothing party. It's like, what the fuck ever.
And
man.
at the end of that thing, right there, that clip right there, she even says she was like in meetings like that pointless. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like pointless meetings like this one that amount to nothing. People are tired of this shit. And it's like, yeah, they are, but you were like one of the headliner dumbasses of this particular meeting. You spent 10 minutes being as dumb and loud as anybody in there and accomplishing nothing. So it's like, you know, just the sheer lack of self-awareness. But it's like, also, she is the person who like actively prevents her party from doing the thing, all kinds of things all the time anyway. You know what I mean? Like when they do a thing like pass a budget with the Democrats or whatever, she's the one who steps in and is like, we can't have that. She's like one of the most, I know she wants to do opposite and terrible things, but still she's obstructionist. She keeps things from happening. And then she says this, which again, the thing she said in itself is very, very true. People are sick of it and should be, but it's her fault.
Maybe she's saying the meeting, the committee hearing would have been worth it if they'd slapped Dr. Fauci in handcuffs and let him out. Like, because he spent like a decent chunk of the hearing. He was asked about the death threats against his family because of his stupid performative bullshit like this. And while he's sitting there talking about how his grandkids need security because people are threatening to kill them, two guys behind him, one of whom I know at least just got out of jail for January 6th, is like smirking and laughing. So if these hearings do anything, it just reminds people they want to kill Tony Fauci.
Right.
So yeah, maybe she succeeded. We'll find out if he gets murdered.
I mean, dude. I mean, I've thought for a while now, but after today or yesterday, too, like he got the patience of Joe. But I mean, I guess $12 million helps and whatnot. $12 million and being retired and all that. But like, just I don't know. I feel like it would drive me up the wall if I was this dude in this position. And not only do people not appreciate it, but they call for your head, want you to be thrown in prison for crimes against humanity. It's like, even on a smaller scale, all throughout the pandemic, we've got some patrons and viewers and stuff who've talked about it. People that are in the medical field who would like have to help, would want and try to help people with COVID and would get, yelled at for it or whatever, because they didn't, for political reasons. And it just has to drive you crazy. I feel like I'd be pulling my hair out all the time. And he's like the peak of that.
It's also like the fault of memory here is like there were countries that had strict lockdowns where you literally were legally not allowed to leave your house. And I'm not talking about China. I'm talking about Spain. Like the UK had a law where you could get 1 20-minute walk outside of your house a day. But those are rules that weren't really enforced. Only hardcore nerds followed them. But like, if you're a small business owner and you were forced to close, absolutely, that fucking sucks if you couldn't get a PPP loan. I hope if you have a small business loan, you got a PPP loan and committed hella fraud. But like, the idea that like people who lived in Florida are rebelling and want to kill Dr. Fauci because the beach was closed for 3 days in 2020 is so fucking insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of insane, let's talk about the discourse surrounding Donald Trump's big, historic conviction.
A moment of history truly befitting of this moment for a great nation of ours. And the day of the verdict was handed down. Let me read this headline from, I think, Politico. Ever been slapped by breasts? That's how chaotic it was ahead of Trump's historic conviction. I found the video of a woman jumping around showing her titties. I'm not going to show this because this is the family show here at Skews. But she just straight up smacked a woman with her titties because she loves Donald Trump. Don't show it, Matt.
Don't show it, Matt. We'll get in trouble. You guys can imagine it.
So 34 felonies, whatever. He's a first-time offender. Before we get off the rails with the apocalyptic rhetoric about what happened here, this thing he's charged with would probably result, because he's technically speaking a first-time offender because he's never been convicted of any of the other shit he's ever done. like at the high end, 1 to 4 years in prison, which he won't get. He's probably going to get a fine and probation. Right? If he really pisses off the judge really wants to punish him for what an asshole he was during the trial. It'll probably be like home detention for like a month with an ankle monitor, with permission to go to his rallies.
And also, I mean, just based off what I have seen people who at least claim to be lawyers on the internet say, like, that's not really out of bounds, right? In this situation, like it's like legally speaking, his first offense, even though, we know he's been breaking the law since ever, but it's the first time he's been convicted for it. It's nonviolent, all that's the nature of the crimes and all that. That's like a reasonable expectation.
But he also insinuated death threats against the judge's daughters. You factor in all that stuff. He also has to do a pretrial sentencing meeting with a psychologist. I imagine that's going to go swimmingly for him. So this is how he responds to it. If you have this video of Trump talking mad on Truth Social.
My civil rights have been totally violated with this highly political, unconstitutional, and election-interfering witch hunt of a trial. Our failing nation is being laughed at all over the world for what's happening.
All right. So as he goes on with a rigged trial, I just want to talk about how nobody involved in this conversation has any real principles. Like, this is a guy who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the death penalty of the Central Park Five for a sexual assault that they actually absolutely did not commit. They've been found they were free from jail from. So, like, he doesn't care about rigged trials. He doesn't care about fairness. He doesn't care about civil rights. And I just think it's funny he's claiming his civil rights were violated. He's claiming his trial was unfair, which to him, I think means that all the witnesses he successfully bribed were ones in his other cases.
Right.
Because ProPublica had this report came out this week that where multiple witnesses have received significant financial benefits from his businesses and campaign. Let me read here. 9 witnesses in the criminal cases against former President Donald Trump have received significant financial benefits, including large raises from his campaign, severance packages, new jobs, and grant of shares and cash from Trump's media company. One campaign aide has average monthly pay doubled from $26,000 to $53,000. That's a month. Another employee got a $2 million severance package, barring him from voluntarily cooperating with law enforcement. All right.
Right. So these are people who in some capacity work for Donald Trump and would be reasonably called to testify as witnesses in these ongoing cases he has. And these people have gotten, seemingly odd and unexplained bumps in pay and benefits and stuff directly from Trump in the run up to their potential testimony, which seems a little odd. Right.
I would like to be in the pay negotiation for the guy whose pay went from $26K to $54,000 a month, and been like, "Well, I'm going to quit if it's only $26,000." And nobody goes, "Well, how about 30?" They go, "Well, how about 54?"
Yeah,
it's just like what an insane fucking thing to lead negotiation. So, like, we're drowning in so much bullshit. Let's start from Trump himself here on the right. Like, Trump has now come fully around because they would say he was complaining about locking up political rivals. And someone on Fox News during an interview was like, well, in all fairness, you did say you would lock up Hillary Clinton. And now he's like, well, I never said I should lock her up. It was just the crowd chanting.
Right, right. It's like, no, they were saying it. They were, that wasn't me.
The Fox News people were like, well, we can call it up. He goes, no, don't call it up. It's like, okay, we're just like pretending you didn't do that now. And here's Charlie.
Yeah, well, he also had that. Did you see that clip that they dug up of him in the run up to the election in 2016 on the whole lock her up front? Him in the middle of a speech talking about how, like, she should be barred from, she shouldn't be allowed to run because of that, for the stuff for Benghazi or whatever. I don't even remember what all her emails, whatever, all the shit they wanted her locked up for. Like, it was him saying that, based on that, she shouldn't even be allowed to hold political office or run from it because it's like,
right.
It's
I've seen it take a lot that I can't believe a felon is allowed to run for president. And I want to say, like, yeah, I mean, I wish Trump wasn't possibly going to win the presidency, but felons should be like, we criminalize so much political activity in this country, most of the left, like in 30 years of someone who chained themselves to an oil pipeline and called environmental terrorist for it.
There was, man, I can't remember the specifics of this, but there was some like early on socialist dude who was like
Eugene Debs.
That's it. Right. Who like ran from office from prison. He was effectively an actual political prisoner, but it's like, he was keeping it real. What was he doing? It was like what specifically had he done? It was related to like unions and all that shit, right? Or like the coal mine situation or something like that. I don't remember.
So I mean, people were like back in that era. People were like thrown in jail for handing out literature saying that you shouldn't be a draft for World War One and shit. So like it's stuff like
Right.
like you're literally talking about like if you say felon should be like run for president. It's like, well, should like somebody who caught a stupid charge for spray painting political graffiti or something, like when they were 17, I think that the founding fathers are correct about this because they were all fucking outlaws who would have been hanged as traitors if they hadn't won. So they didn't put that in there for a reason.
Right. No, I'm with you. I do think that, someone who, foments a insurrection should not be able to run for president, but,
right.
Hasn't been found guilty of that yet, I guess.
If you commit out and out political violence as an adult, it's probably fair that you shouldn't be allowed to participate in the civil democratic process. It's not like Trump was young and dumb when he did January 6th, you know what I'm saying? Right. So like, I just like, I do think you're right, but yeah. So back to like some crazy rhetoric about Trump maybe getting a fine and some probation. Here's Charlie Kirk, founder of a very influential Talking Points USA, the mother MAGA influence.
What is going? Does he require his guests to be like different versions of him, and they all wear the same MAGA hats the whole time? Is it like the uniform for going on the show? This is funny to me. This panel that we're looking at right here with those hats on and all that.
Yeah, that font and kerning isn't even the original merch. They got their own bootleg MAGA merch.
Bootleg MAGA merch. All right, let's see what Charlie's got to say.
Mm-hmm. So today, as we say, this was an attempted judicial and legal assassination. Some of you in the audience remember where you were when you heard the news that they killed JFK. You remember where you were on 9/11. This is an equally as significant day. You will remember the day. You remember what you were doing when you heard the news, because it has never happened before in American history. So today, as
got it. So it's funny when you say so he says some of you might remember where you were when JFK was assassinated. Right. So Turning Points USA, we know what it really is. It's grassroots pretending like the Donald Trump's young and hip, right? Yes. AstroTurf grassroots, right? But what it pretends to be is an organizing college campuses for conservatives.
Right.
So he's telling his audience of supposed college kids, obviously a lot of you remember where you were when JFK was assassinated.
Yeah, I thought that too. He said that, and I did some quick math in my head, and I was like, I don't know that. But then I was like, well, I don't know. He probably does have a lot of papaws watching him. I would imagine. Like,
he does.
I'm about to say,
that's his audience.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and anything in this even realm at all, I always assume it's the same type of demographic that Fox News is dealing with. Not entirely, but mostly. And it's another thing. It's kind of like the MTG thing, sort of. Where I don't know that it'll be a flashbulb memory for me, but like him being like, because this has never happened before in American history. It's like, that's true. This is wild. This shit is wild, and a lot of people are going to remember it, but like. Because it's so insane to us that a former president, potential future president, has been convicted 34 times on felony charges. Like, that's noteworthy, but he's saying it's the deterioration of the justice system in America as we know it, and of course that's insane.
Right. These people, I don't know what they're looking at, man. A lot of people like people's fundamental understanding of reality is so different than mine, and based upon stuff that's not actually real. It's like. It's some mythical version of stuff they believe in. So let's say Trump did get totally railroaded. That's normal in America. Like, it's not the first fucking guy to get railroaded. It's utterly insane. But that brings me to one of the biggest groups taking L's here, like the centrist and center left pundits who said this is like a super weak case, or this isn't how we do things in America. Mature democracies lock their presidents in prison all the fucking time. I think the last 3 Brazilian presidents went to jail. France's presidents have gone to jail. Fucking South Korea's last president's in jail. This is like, we need to lock more presidents up, man. Lock more politicians up. It's fucking normal and it's healthy if they do stuff that's fucked up. And so the centrist for a second, for the past 8 years, we've called this endless stupid brain loop, talking about misunderstanding how things work. Where a lot of simple truths were treated as matters of paralyzing complexity. You got a man who ran his entire business on fraud, cheated on his taxes, committed sexual assault, conspired with his henchmen to obstruct justice, made himself into a presidential candidate, then became president. And then because he became president, he couldn't reconcile the first set of facts with the last one. So then you go, presidents don't do these sort of things, or if a president did do those things, it couldn't count. That would mean the president of the United States was a criminal, and that would mean, the Debranga's on the fucking fritz. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so weird to me because I'm like, I default to assuming that the majority of high level politicians in this country do some kind of shady business shit that would get me or you in hot water if we got like, so whenever it comes out, whenever one of them gets, and it's just, they just got to try to not get caught. But whenever they like get caught, I'm always like, oh, they did that shit. And it's not just with Trump, but that's where my head goes. And the idea that they just can't buy that he specifically would do all that. But also like they off of what I just said about assuming they all do it, they've been doing that too. Who was that? There was a Republican congressman who, when all this was going on, tweeted out, he was like, the average American commits 3 felonies a day.
It was Andy Biggs, yeah.
And, yeah, Andy Biggs is like, whenever happens, it's like, I'm not doing it. Yeah, we talked about that on the show, but it's like, so you're doing all those felonies. Like, look, I do felonies, you do felonies, we all do felonies. We're like, I don't do felonies though. So, telling themselves.
It's also like, so we'll get to the actual like merits of the case in a little bit. Like we talked about a little bit, but like, so yeah, they did take 34 charges that would be misdemeanors and elevate them to a federally based upon a conspiracy count that the jury bought, but it was a novel legal theory. But people get busted for these underlying charges all the time, right? But I think it was like 3,000 last year. People pled guilty to this business fraud charge he was hit with. It's just a felony escalation penalty. The conspiracy one that's a little weird, but like you're not allowed to try new things with the prosecutor, since these people fucking love prosecutors throwing a book at people for dumb bullshit. So what happens once to their guy, it's like, well, we got to
absolutely. Well, that's the whole thing. And now in revert, like we're talking earlier about felons and shit. Like these people, right? They love people getting the book thrown at them. They have no sympathy whatsoever for anybody caught up in the criminal justice system. It's like, you can't do the crime, can't do the time, don't do the crime. Felons should be thrown in the trash forever. They shouldn't be allowed to vote, own a gun, have a job. They shouldn't be allowed to do anything ever once you've committed a felony, because you've removed yourself from society at that point, by fucking up. And that's your own fault. And you got to live with that and have to take personal responsibility for it. And the rest of us don't want you around. Like that's the MAGA world. That's their general outlook on every other felon in this country, except for Donald Trump, who is conversely their God emperor. So yeah.
And we got so we spent trapped in this hell for past 7 years or whatever, where all these people in the middle who are high on American exceptionalism, who think it's somehow uncouth to point out what a tacky fucking immoral criminal asshole Donald Trump is. Like it brings down the entire republic, like how we all think of ourselves if you just point it out. And then 12 regular Americans listened to a couple weeks testimony, got in a room to deliberated for 9 total hours, 7 of which were lunch, and he did that bullshit.
And I mean that indicates that because I'm all dumb too, that would seem to indicate to me that it must have been a pretty strong case, you know what I mean, in terms of the merits of it, or a very shitty defense, But yeah, we were talking last week. I was like, Mark, how long should we expect this to go? And you're like, well, apparently rule of thumb, they'll probably deliberate for 4 days, but could be more, who knows? And yeah, it ended up being 9 hours, and it's like when it comes back that quick, it's pretty open and shut, I would imagine.
His lawyer spent a huge chunk of the case trying to get Stormy Daniels to admit that they didn't have sex, and literally no one believes they didn't have sex. But he had to spend a lot of time on that because Trump wanted him to prove it, right? So going to have a Matlock moment, because Trump probably watched Matlock, where it's going to get her to confess on the stand that actually never had sex, and she feels so bad for framing poor Mr. Trump or whatever. But the also I heard somebody explaining because Trump's main attorney on this his name is Todd Blanche, and Trump apparently you get 10 peremptory challenges for jurors in New York for criminal cases like this, where you can just dismiss a juror for whatever reason. Right. Trump, they both do. Both sides do. Yeah. You can strike 10 of them. Yeah. So Trump was basically doing his own jury selection, where he insisted Blanche use 10 peremptory challenges on jurors, and then ran out and couldn't actually bump people who actually might have been politically biased against him. And then Trump just assumed the judge would just give him more peremptory challenges. Right. And it's so they fucked up the whole thing, but that's not my problem. That's why you hire a good attorney and let them do their work. But these 12 jurors, the common sense wisdom of the regular person, won out, and they're basically braver than every single U.S. fucking senator. And they did this knowing they would get death threats, and that's exactly what has happened. there's like the online activity of people trying to dox them and figure out who they are so they can post their address online and swat them and try to get them murdered has shot through the roof. And I hope nobody ever finds out who these people are. If one of you is watching, please don't take a book deal. Just quietly live your life. But like, this is just like, this is where we're at in America right now. And I don't think Trump has the juice to like actually get anybody murdered right now. Maybe I'm sure there's one psycho out there who'd be willing to do it, but like, it wasn't like it was in 2017. As far as everyone's political takeaways from this is by far the funniest one to me, that everyone seems like all the centrists and right. See, the centrists seem to believe it. The right wing seems to be bullshitting. But I'll let Hugh Hewitt express it on Fox News, a supposed legal expert.
I think Trump is in a much stronger position today than he was on Wednesday.
Kellyanne.
Yes, I agree with everything.
I mean, yeah, man, this is what they've been saying like since he got indicted, and it's like, and I said this in the video I made about both, about the indictment and this, but it's like, I remember after he got indicted, I turned on Fox News to see how this is going. It was the same. They're all talking about how great this was, but they're like so pissed off. They're like saying it through like gritted teeth and teary eyes and stuff. You know what I mean? They're like, this is great. This is great news. I'm thrilled about this. This is awesome. It's like they've been doing that the whole time, and they're doing that here now. And it's like, I don't know. You seem pretty upset about it, considering this is such a massive. Why are you so pissed off about it if this is such an objective, huge win for you and your guy? You know, it's like, that don't seem to track to me.
With the old expression, a hit dog gonna holler, right? If if getting hit feels great for the dog, why is he hollering?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So another bizarre take, Mitt Romney, who ostensibly hates Donald Trump, said Bragg, that's the DA, should have settled the case against Trump as would have been the normal procedure, but he made a political decision. Bragg may have won the battle for now, but he may have lost the political war. Democrats think they can put out the Trump fire with oxygen. It's political malpractice. Now, Mitt Romney is also a white-collar criminal. So I'm not like my bigger takeaway from this is the Trump verdict. Takeaway from the Trump verdict is that corporate political corruption is so normalized in this country that people who benefit from white collar crime are just fundamentally in shock about it.
Right. Yeah. For sure. That's what they're like admitting that they do all this shit. Right. They're like, well, hold on. But I thought we all kind of understood that we were just going to do shit like this. It's like, this is what you're supposed to be locking people up for weed, not this stuff. We run this country. We make jobs. Let us do our crimes. What the hell?
So that brings us to the politics of this. Since Mitt Romney thinks it gives Trump oxygen, we'll get to a pretty funny focus group that the New York Times put out today in a little bit. But like, so Trump honestly might have gotten pretty lucky with the conviction, with the timing of it, because Slate's piece about a guy coming forward to say he heard the Trump say the N-word on the set of The Apprentice, like came out the same morning as the indictment.
Oh, absolutely. I know it did, because I was looking for something to make a video about, because I needed, I try to do like one a week if possible, or whatever, or at least. And I was like, it was Thursday, and I was like, well, I didn't think the verdict was going to come down for, a few more days or something. I saw Trump said the N-word, and I was like, that'll work. I can do something with that. So I put out a quick video about him saying the N-word, and like literally 30 minutes afterwards, it's like, breaking news. The verdict happened. I was like, well, that's about right. But no, that definitely got buried for sure. I mean, like, and the whole point of the video I made was like, oh, this is going to be huge for him, as people love it when people say the N-word. The N-word's one of their favorite words. They're going to love it. But like, I don't know how much that would have ever mattered to begin with, especially with Trump, but it definitely got buried completely for
Trump,
sure. Overshadowed
all
by
the
this.
Talk about MAGA stuff. It's worth remembering that Trump does need sane people to vote for him to win. He does. Right. Normal everyday people walking around are uncomfortable with out and out. Pretty much the only thing most Americans agree is racist is saying the N-word, right? And most people don't like that. So I think if you could get people to know that, I think it would change votes, right? And by the way, if the Dems wanted to put this back in the news cycle, if they ever felt like doing politics, which they never do, which we'll get to that in a little bit, but they can have hearings about this, because the situation in which Trump said it as a game show host was, do you think America would buy an N-word winning, right?
Yeah.
Arguing to the producers that they could not let a black guy win a business show. Now, the one thing that
because America would be like, that can't be right. This doesn't make any sense. Black people can't do business. Yeah. I mean, that's the type of thing you hear about like studio executives and shit in Hollywood having those conversations for like years, but 40, 50 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, we can't have a black lead in a movie.
America's not gonna come
out for that. Yeah, right. Exactly.
So, but like, if they wanted to get back in the news, they can have hearings about this under oversight, because like the federal government does take the rigging of game shows seriously, right? There are huge laws about that. You can't rig a game show to have a white guy win because you think it's more believable to the audience.
Mhm.
All right. I've worked on game shows. There's a bunch of compliance people walking around because there was a scandal in the 50s and it's very heavily regulated. So they could have hearings about that and call this guy to testify and have him tell a story. They're not going to do it, but they absolutely could. So bring it back to this, the verdict. So grand jury returned its indictment over a year ago. Trial's been ongoing for over a month. With all that time to prepare for any combination of outcomes, Democrats seemingly did nothing and are largely paralyzed. There's no like huge. If they're doing anything, they're saying we need to respect the verdict and the rule of law, but they're barely doing that. Very mealy mouthed. I saw a few people. Eric Swalwell, friend of the show, Eric Swalwell, had a cool moment at a hearing today. Talking about it, but for the most part, there's no organized like sort of talking points about it. There's no assertion someone with 34 felony counts should be disqualifying for a major party nominee. And there's this tidbit. The Biden quote, this is from the New Republic. The Biden campaign has no plans to spend money on television ads about Trump's criminal conduct or the facts have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. They're so fucking bad at this. Like the Biden administration did put out a statement saying he's a convicted felon, but that's nothing. That makes it sound like they're sort of agreeing with Trump that all he did was a paperwork crime, right?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't get why you wouldn't just emphasize in campaign ads or and otherwise, whatever, just in the messaging that the opponent is now a convicted felon, that this happened. Like to make the choice to avoid. Biden generally. Hasn't Biden generally, his whole thing has been like he tries not to just talk about Trump at all. Like he barely ever says his name and shit like that. They just try to avoid it and whatnot. And then also, I guess they're like, the other side's been saying that Biden's the one pulling the strings on this the whole time anyway. You know what I mean? So I don't know if they think like if we flex on it, I don't know. I think it's insane to not, to just ignore this completely. That seems wild to me.
It does all right, so the complaints, like the one that is driving me the craziest about somebody that like cares about criminal justice stuff is like they're saying it's a politically motivated prosecution. Every prosecutor in America is either elected or appointed by a politician. Every single prosecution is politically motivated. And if you're mad about this one, if Bragg thought it would get him more votes to convict Trump, that you need to get rid of elected prosecutors then, because I got bad news about every single time they avoid charging a police officer who does something fucked up, or every single time they want to look tough on crime. So like everybody in prison, do you know what a felony murder is, Trey?
I mean,
it's when you basically get like 20 years of life in prison or whatever, because a crime you initiated and it resulted in someone's death. So you could be shoplifting, a security guard decides to try to shoot you, misses you and hits an innocent bystander who dies. You're on the hook for the murder.
Okay,
Stuff like that happens all the time in America. And those prosecutions are also politically motivated, even though all you did was like steal a sweatshirt or some shit. All right. So like, I just don't need patience for those sort of complaints. It's like, what?
No, you're right. It is all politics, but even like, like famously, like when Harvey Dent tried all 300 members of the Gotham Mafia at the same time under the RICO laws, that was a political stunt. Okay.
No, you couldn't convict him. No, you couldn't convict him. Right. Dark Knight rules. So when you just say he's a convicted felon, it sounds like I said, you sound like you're agreeing with him. He just committed a paperwork crime. It sounds like he just ripped the tag off a mattress or something. And it's like, it's not very specific. And it sounds Americans don't trust institutions anyway. That's kind of what makes us all Americans. But like what he did, like the Biden administration should put out a statement saying, or the campaign said he had his fixer pay off Daniels, quote, for personal gain. It wasn't for personal gain. It was to defraud the American public, to deprive them of information. Like, I'm not saying that like I personally would use this high-minded rhetoric in a conversation with a friend, but for a political campaign, it's in bounds. He was depriving the American people of the information they needed to make an informed decision on Election Day 2016 and to illegitimately attain the most powerful office in the world on behalf of the country's far right. He covered up his affair with Daniels so he could appoint Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court to take away your fucking rights and rig elections for people who want to empower your employer to fuck you over. He committed felonies so that the Reactionary Heritage Foundation could rewrite the nation's tax laws to make rich people richer. Doesn't that sound better than he's a convicted felon?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, he lied to the American. He purposely misled the American people. And again, it's like, it just feels like it's one of those things that it's wild to me that is the most obvious thing about him. He's purposely, willfully misled the American people for this long. But now he's like, formally convicted of doing that.
It's not, but it's not to calm. Like you got to connect the conviction with people's lives being worse in a lot of ways.
Right, because people out here
can
be like, well, you know, at the end of the day, who gives a shit about any of that? Like, people might have that response to it. It's like, it's not like he's killing people or whatever. He's doing weirdo business stuff. I'm sure they all do it. You know, it's not relevant. I still like his tax policy, like that type of thing.
He lied to obtain the presidency so he can install judges and a regulatory regime so that 16-year-old kids are literally falling into meat grinders at packing plants.
Mm-hmm.
All right? That's what he did. You can say that. It's not only in bounds in politics, it's true. It's fucking true. And they're not going to do any of that, man. It's like this case is like a perfect embodiment of what a trash human being Donald Trump is too. If anybody cares about character anymore, forget the adultery. Although if Melania can't trust him, why should you? Is a pretty good campaign ad. What kind of terrible employer has an underling bar against his own house to cover up his boss's affair? Right? He's just a piece of shit, man. But all they're going to fall back on is going to respect the rule of law and, you know, trust in the jury verdict. And like the reason you would do that is to curry favor from the Republicans by not capitalizing on their political misfortune for having accidentally, air quote, nominating a fucking criminal to be to the presidency. You know, there's Tim Scott, who was ostensibly one of the saner Republicans, talking about the verdict. If you got this, man. That's not it.
Your thought is
that's Trey Crowd. We skipped over that because we're running behind. That's Trey Gowdy talking about Hunter Biden. He actually hit there. He's talking about how he's a former Republican on Fox News. He's talking about how he thinks the real unfair prosecution is the government going after Hunter Biden, which is really funny. We don't need to say it. So Tim Scott called it a day of evil
for the future.
Yeah. He said the prosecutor tried to make the argument that it's going to be good for the Trump campaign, but called it a day of evil. All right. So Biden's keeping his mouth shut to hopefully try to tamp down the anger from the right. Megyn Kelly has promised prosecutions of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama for offenses she doesn't know what they are. Charlie Kirk, we talked about earlier, said we need to indict the left to lose America. Donations to the Trump campaign surged. You got this video of Mike Garcia. Matt, I actually want to show it as an example of why Democrats should do politics. All right.
Concern you having a convicted felon at the top of the ticket?
I think the American people saw what happened in New York. They saw what were typically misdemeanors being elevated to 34 felonies.
All right. So Garcia is a member of Congress who represents the California 27th out here in Santa Clarita and part of San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, right up the road from me.
Me too. He represents a district that Democrats controlled for 20 years until he barely took it in 2020. And he's in a district that Biden won in 2020, 67% to 31%. One reason to do politics about this shit is to gin up turnout so this asshole loses and you have you have a better chance of taking control of the House.
Right. Well, also on that note, you mentioned the money in passing because Trump did, it got 300 million, whatever it was, a crazy amount of donations in the wake of this from his cult, from his people. But like we had talked before in a previous episode, even that is like not necessarily the worst thing, right? Because it's like that's less money. The more money that goes to Trump that goes to his like legal defenses and stuff, that's less money from Republican donors or Republican supporters that's going to other Republican races or the Republican Party writ large or even his own campaign. So it's like even that is not all that bad if you look at it that way. Like the fact that they're doing that is not like, a huge detriment to the left.
His campaign's probably paying like Kimberly Guilfoyle, her stylist, $30,000 a month or some shit. It's all fucking grift. So yeah, but that part that makes me sad is some MAGA grandma on Social Security sending him $50 or something.
Yeah.
So not a lot of polling out yet, but here's one from Axios: 49% of independents think Trump should drop out post guilty verdict. Also, 15% of Republicans said Trump should end his campaign because of the conviction. We're 5 days out from the verdict, and to my knowledge, not a single elected Democrat has called on Trump to step down. Why?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea why?
I mean, no, like just as a practical, no, politically, no. Practically, it's like, cause they know that, there's no point in it, but politically there is a point in it. It's, to
put it into people's heads that he's unqualified to hold the office.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, you can't I don't know why they find it so uncouth to do campaigning and politics. Like, it's like, it's so weird to me, man. I don't understand why they don't want to win. Like,
well,
it's
they've always
like,
kind of, in my lifetime anyway, in my living memory, it feels like they've always kind of had this, like you said, it's uncouth. Like it seems like they, whatever, like they think they're taking the high road or that they're above that type of chicanery or whatever. And it's like you said, it's like, well, do you want to win or not? You know, like you gotta play the game. Sometimes you got to get in there and sling a little mud with them. Fucking why
you got
not?
an electorate who wants better environmental laws, investment in manufacturing and green energy, higher minimum wage in general, access to abortion, and you're losing elections because Republicans call you pedophile and you
Yeah.
refuse to engage with it. It's very fucking weird, man. If somebody called me a pedophile, I'd want to punch them, and I just want to, much less try to take their job from them. That seems like a bare minimum you should want to do. So you can't let like undecided voters try to figure this out on their own, even though they're kind of doing it. So like, there's a deeply funny conversation with undecided voters in a focus group that the New York Times put out today. 11 undecided voters. Here's an exchange. Yeah, let me read. I'll just read from a couple of them. Here's one guy. You have to remember why Trump is the choice for millions of people. Trump represents a shock to the system. His supporters don't hold him to the same ethical standards. He's the anti-hero, the Tony Soprano, the Breaking Bad, the guy who does bad things, who's a bad guy but does them on behalf of the people he represents. And then the guy got the same point, which the guy's sort of right. He's
I was about to
morally
say
wrong, but he's right.
That's
right?
what I was
He's
about to
political
say.
analysis.
It's like, dude, this guy, like, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty astute observation, really. It
is.
don't hit for me, but
No.
like I think the guy's pretty on point with that.
The nihilism is fucking bleak, but
Yeah.
his political understandings are correct. If he was doing it as analysis and not as his own justification, I would absolutely agree with him. So he said, the exchange went like this: Trump is not a moral compass to a lot of supporters. He's the bad guy that'll do things on our behalf. He's the Tony Soprano or the Walter White. Another guy's like, don't bring my Sopranos into this. And the guy goes, he's the anti-hero. Another guy goes, come on, man. He's just mad about you making him feel bad at Sopranos.
Yeah.
Another guy said, his reason for why he was leaning against Trump now was, you're saying it's all like a political theater and a farce and whatnot, but he was having an affair with a porn star and not a particularly attractive one at that. There are so many wonderful porn stars.
This guy's clear. He's got his list of favorites. He just disagrees with Trump's. He's like, why not Alexis, Texas? That's what I'm saying as an American.
So this guy not bummed about the underlying behavior, but wants a president who would have had sex with a porn star he finds more attractive. All right.
Yeah.
This one is the best one. This guy says, what's the big deal about bribing Stormy Daniels? I want a president who's going to be able to cover up a $130,000 bribe to Daniels. If he can't pull that off, I'm not going to trust him with a nuclear football. I want a better class of criminal.
Yeah.
He's quoting the second Joker reference. Was that the Batman version? This town needs a better class of criminal. I mean, the Jack Nicholson version. This town needs a better class of criminal. That's what Washington, D.C. needs, a better class of criminal. And that's why I can't bring myself to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. Voters rule. Democracy rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I was saying earlier. It's like I think a lot of people, it seems like this guy, like, again, it's like taken for granted that the people in those positions are going to do that type of shit. They just can't get caught. And if you get caught, you're a loser. I guess they don't like that.
It's true. But it's sort of like, even in Goodfellas, like everybody gets pinched. It's how you got to take your pinch like a man, right?
Yeah.
It's like they can't even get around to that.
Yeah.
So it's like he wasn't smart enough to figure out a way to get away with paying a woman $130,000. It's true. Couldn't figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I saw some of the polling where, like you said, independents thinking that, like when it first happened, I didn't really think it would move the needle in either direction at the end of the day, really, just because I felt like, again, we talk about it all the time. These like the independents, undecided, fence, those they're just so wild to me. Like conceptualizing those people, like at this point in America, after the last 8 years we've all been through or whatnot, I just don't. It's wild not knowing which way you're going to go yet, but they do exist, I suppose.
Dude, your buddy Al Gore lost an election in 2020 because people were bank shot horrified by the fact that Bill Clinton cheated on his wife, even though the economy was rolling and 9/11 didn't happen for another year after the election. It's like people don't like adulterers. They don't. Right? And a majority of
He's been
people,
a known adulterer, though. You know what I mean?
people
Like,
don't know that, Trey. They don't. I can't explain to you how little
they're
people
still
pay
going to
attention to
not
the news.
know that, Mark, is what I'm saying.
No,
even if you tell them, they're like, they don't believe it. They don't believe any of it. It's not like they've never been exposed to any of it. They don't believe it. They don't think
That's
any
not
of it's true. It's a
true.
witch hunt.
That's not true. Again, Trump needs normal people to vote for him. The hardcore MAGA psychos who are unreachable are not a significant chunk of the American electorate. They might be 25, 30% total. And they obviously they don't vote, obviously, because he's told them not to trust voting. So, like, he needs regular people, married women in the suburbs, to go to the ballot, go to the election polling location and check a box for him. And whether or not, like, suspecting that, I don't know if you've seen the data. So many people did not know about the Access Hollywood tape because it went out way as a story so quickly because the Democrats could not make hay of it.
Right.
So a president being convicted of a felony is big fucking news they will hear about.
Right.
All right. It will break through the news. A jury convicted him of cheating on his wife, basically. So yeah.
I know. It's just, it's just wild to me, the things that people, don't know or have forgotten or don't realize, or the things that don't get to them. I always forget that so many people, basically, there's people that vote that don't really engage in politics at all until maybe an election year a little bit. And then there's tons of people who just never engage, period. And it's like, it's just wild to me, someone here be like, wait, what happened? Donald Trump got convicted of theft. That's crazy. When did that happen? But, those people exist, I guess.
Donald Trump was president?
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right.
I got to vote.
Thank y'all for watching. Listen, go to TreyCrowder.com. Check out my upcoming tour dates. Check out me and Corey's book. Go to weeklyskews.com/more. And check this show out on Patreon. 2 bonus episodes a month for $5. Get some more Skews in your life. Support the show, but you keep watching us on Skews and we'll keep being here.